And sometimes in your mind, that becomes difficult for you to just really sit on your laptop and not really get work done. Hey everyone, my name is Najeeb. I'm an author, founder, speaker, and you might have seen my work, whether it's on TEDx or Forbes, on several other media outlets. For the past 8 years, I have been working from home, or as some like to call it, working remotely. When you work remotely, one of the biggest challenges are really what's the best way to work when you're at home. In this video, I'm going to show you 10 different ways of being more productive when you work from home. Over the past 20 years, the amount of people who are able to now work remotely is dramatically increased. And it's no surprise. I mean, you look at technology, now we have the phones, we have iPads, we have laptops that's so much more readily accessible. And not only that, the access and abundance of internet access has dramatically increased our capabilities of really working anywhere, whether it's at home or on a job site, or simply if you're even in an office. And when you work remotely, there are a few perks. One being which is you can really work anywhere. And what that also means is, depending on your work schedule or the place that you're in, you're able to adapt your situation around you, and also at the same time adapt to the work schedule timing. And that's obviously dependent on where and how you work. There was a study done by Stanford University about remote working, and the study was done and conducted with over 16,000 people for a company. And they split up the group. In one group, one camp was people who work from home, the others who didn't. And what they found out was people who work from home, not only did they have higher productivity, but their mental and health well-being was much better. In addition to that, they took fewer sick days because, well, frankly, they didn't get sick from other coworkers. So those are some of the benefits of remote working or working from home. As discussed in this video, we're going to be talking about the 10 different ways of how to be more productive when you're working from home. Number 1, selecting space. The space in where you work is hugely important of your productivity as well as your output. Now, when it comes to selecting space, you want to think about a few different factors that come into play. One being which is the room. If you're working at home, whether it's the bedroom or your kitchen or your living room, you want to make sure that the space has enough room for not only yourself but also your work. So if you just need a laptop to work, that might just be enough if it is a bed or if it's a kitchen. But if you need more room to spread out a whole bunch of papers, if you're kind of going through that, if you're in design, especially when you're in design or perhaps accounting, you might need to lay out a few things and look at where the arrangements of images or graphics go. And for that case, you might want to opt for working on the dining table or the kitchen or somewhere else. Now, when it comes to that, what you want to be aware of is, 1, do you have the room for that? And 2, what is the environment for that? And I'll touch on that later on in this video. The one key thing when it comes to working remotely at home is that you want to make sure not only can you use that space, is the space available the entire day? Because sometimes you're not able to use it at night, or sometimes you are able to use it at night, and that makes a difference, and it's a one-on-one case basis. One of the other simple things when it comes to space is outlets. Wherever you're working, you want to make sure, does it have enough of a reach for you to plug in your outlets? Otherwise, you're just going to be shifting around in the middle of work, and that gets to be more distracting. Now that you have your space, you want to make sure one other thing, which is decluttering. Now, when it comes to decluttering, you want to make sure that it is effectively decluttered from when you're working to when you are relaxing. Last thing you want is when you go to your kitchen or your dining table at the end of the evening, stuff is all over the place. So that's why you want to declutter, whether it's at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day. Whatever works for you, you want to make sure you declutter to make it effectively a separation between work and home life. By the way, I have one bonus tip at the end for you, so keep on watching. Number 2, transition. Transition is when you're going from home to work. Now, typically, if you are working in an office, you get out of the home and you basically go on a drive, or you take your commute, or you walk, or perhaps cycle and go to your office. Now, when you are working at home, you don't really have that. You can instantaneously go from waking up to working, which is one of the pros, but that's also one of the cons, because what that means is you don't have that clear separation. And sometimes in your mind, that becomes difficult for you to just really sit on your laptop and not really get work done. So the other thing when it comes to that is you want to make sure that you have a proper transition, whether that means leaving out the door and coming back in 10 seconds after, or perhaps putting on a different set of clothes, or simply going to another room where you're working, and that room is just for working. And when it comes to transition, that helps you make the mental context switch that, hey, I'm not in home mode or relax mode, I'm in working mode. And that helps you be more productive when you are working at home. Number 3 is super unique to each and every one of you, and that is your work schedule. Your work schedule dramatically differs from person to person, and it depends, starting first with your chronobiology. Your chronobiology is your natural cycle of when you're most productive, and certain tasks are better to do at certain times based on your chronobiology. At the same time, you also want to look at your habits. How do you enjoy working, and how social are you? Based on those two things, you can figure out your perfect work schedule. And if you want to find out what's your perfect work schedule, click on the link below. You're going to get access to a work schedule generator that's based on a custom work schedule based on your lifestyle. Now that you've figured out your work schedule, you can now use that effectively to figure out, hey, I'm a morning person or I'm an afternoon person. Based on my personality, I'm better off doing certain tasks compared to others. And once you find that out, you can be much more dramatically more productive because it's suited to who you are and your lifestyle. Number 4, noise. Noise is something that we kind of overlook often, because this is one of the things that hugely make a difference when you're working. Now, if you're working at home, sometimes it might make it simple if you're just by yourself. But if you're at home with family, or if you have kids, that makes it dramatically different of when you can or cannot work. Because if it's in the evening, kids are usually home. If it's during the day, and if it's a weekday, you are much better off working productively in that time. Now, the other thing when it comes to noise is you also want to think about not only the noise of the family, but also related to the first point, which is the space. If kids or children are at home, you cannot use certain rooms of the house, whereas during the day, you have much more flexibility. Now, that's the other thing you want to take a look at. And perhaps that means you go work not at home, but at a library or a coffee shop or a co-working space because of the noise concern. And when it comes to songs with lyrics, what ends up happening is your mind might not be able to help you focus on a task and helps you focus on the lyrics itself. So that's why you might want to opt for choosing music that doesn't have any lyrics. Along the same line of thought, the other noise you want to think about is the ambient noise. Ambient noise around you, whether it's perhaps cars going by if you're right by a street, or somewhere else where you can hear sirens or people just walking through. Before we continue with the remainder of the list, one thing I just want to mention is if you feel lonely and isolated when you're working from home and you want to join a group of remote workers and leaders, head on over to Council.Club. Now, on to the rest of the list. Number 5 is lights, and lights dramatically make a difference. Right now, it's daytime, so you're seeing natural light right now. However, if this was at nighttime, it would make much more of a difference. And where you're working and when you're working, and of course, that schedule that we touched on earlier depends on who else you're working with. And if that's the case, you want to figure out, do you have good lighting to focus on and see everything that's around you? Because if you are able to just work somewhere in the basement or in a room that's dark and that's not lit, you're not going to be as productive working from home. And part of what that also means is if it's in the winter, you're going to have less sunlight, so perhaps you might want to invest in having more lighting that helps replicate daylight to help you be more productive and increase your melatonin. Along the same lines of thoughts, when it comes to lights, you want to make sure that you choose the proper lighting which doesn't have glare on your computer screen, so you have lighting coming in from the sides and there is not too much distraction that's going on with the lighting. The 6th is ergonomics. How you sit, where you sit makes a huge difference. If it's on a couch, you might not be able to sit comfortably, or you might be, depending on what couch you have. And if it's on a chair, you want to make sure you sit properly with your arc and your back supported. And part of what that also means is sometimes, too often, we're on our computer and we're slouched over, and this gets to be even worse if you're on your bed or if you're on a couch. That means you want to sit up right, as well as everything in a proper position that includes the screen, the keyboard, the mouse, etc., so you can get your work done in the most productive state without aching any shoulders, hands, or any other symptoms. The next is outside. You want to make sure you go outside. Now, one of the things is working remotely, the advantage of working from home is that, well, you can really work from anywhere, and if you're working from home, the best part is you don't have to go outside. But going outside, especially if you've been home for several days at a time, makes a huge difference. And what that means is simply, whether you're just going around a 5-minute walk around your neighborhood, or perhaps going outside to grocery shop or to the gym, or doing something different, that changes up the routine. That helps you be more productive, because let's face it, if you're always stuck at home, it can get kind of repetitive and boring. So the one thing I've learned is at least once a day, I'll try and go outside, or perhaps after lunch, I'll try and take a quick 5-minute brisk walk around my neighborhood and just be thankful for everything I have in my life. Getting that bit of fresh air allows you to get much more energy, and it changes up your biology, your physical state, so your mental state gets ready for the next bout of work. Next is clothes. Now, clothes is going to matter for some, not for others. And it also depends on what kind of work you're doing. If you are doing work where it involves a lot of webcam and you have to do videos and interviews, you want to make sure you're dressed appropriately. At the same time, if you're just at home and you are just relaxing and having a very simple day, then you might not want to change. But the one benefit, that one hidden advantage that a lot of people don't realize is that once you change into a different set of clothes for your workday, what ends up happening is your mental state, as we mentioned before, the transition, your mental state transitions into, hey, it's work mode, let's focus on it. It's very similar to if you're going to an office and putting on your clothes for your office. So simply changing clothes makes a huge difference. The next is social. Social is such a huge thing, and when you first start working remotely, you might enjoy the isolation or just being by yourself. But after some time, what ends up happening is it starts to eat at you, because you're largely feeling lonely because you don't have anyone to talk to. If you're living with others in your home, that makes it a bit more better, because you're able to interact with others at the end of the day or beginning of the day. However, if you're just by yourself, you don't have anyone else you can talk to, and what that means is you end up being quite lonely. And for me, what I realized is I needed to just be somewhat social and make friends outside of work. And what that meant is going on social media or joining communities such as Council.Club. Council.Club is a community where it's curated group of remote workers and leaders. There are other groups similar to that, and you want to make sure that whether it's online or in person at a local cafe or local meetup, you want to have more social engagements. That helps you be more productive and feel less lonely or feeling less isolated when you work at home. Number 10, logging off. Logging off is a huge thing, especially when you work at home. When you're working in an office, you can simply leave the office and you are at home. But when you work at home, that becomes much more difficult. The reason why is very simple, because you can go from your desk to your bed in 2 seconds, and that makes it even more difficult to detach. Often what ends up happening is, for people who work remotely, they end up working longer hours because they cannot make the disconnect. So if you make the transition of logging off both physically and mentally, that becomes much more easier to be productive in the long term. So here are a few ways to log off. One, turn off your computer. Or if you are using your computer for social or personal purposes, perhaps restarting the computer or just shutting it off and then turning it back on a few seconds after will help you make the mental switch. Hey, work is done, and now I can just have fun and relax. So that is one, just logging off on the computer. Next is from your clothes, what we touched on earlier. Get out of your work clothes. Transition back into just relax mode, and whether it means wearing funky PJs or something else, whatever helps you be a bit more relaxed. Next is tools. Tools make it so much easier to help you be more productive when you're working from home. Some that help you play music, some that help you create and connect with other people who work remotely, or some that help you connect with your workers much better and converse with them, messaging, video, so many different tools. If you click on the link below, you'll find a handful of tools that I've found to be super productive in the 8 years that I've been working. These are the 11 ways to help you be more productive when you're working from home or you're working remotely. And these tips and tricks will help you be dramatically better and help you adjust when you're working from home. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is this changes for everyone. It's not what's worked for me is not exactly what's going to work for you, especially when it comes to schedule, based on your chronobiology and your personality. Now, the one thing you can do is use these tips and tools to help you be dramatically better than I was when I first started working remotely. So what do you think? Do you think I'm missing anything? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to join a group of other remote workers and leaders, a curated group, head on over to Council.Club.